Hello chess friends and welcome to your Chess channel and welcome back to the TCEC season 21. So the Premier Division of the new TCEC season has reached its critical moment, and I think we already know who is moving up to the finals because it was a pure domination by the Stoofvlees engine so far, but it was also a great battle between the Dragon engine and Leela C0. But in my opinion, Leela C0 is making it to the finals for sure because Leela C0 has a comfortable lead in front of this Dragon engine, but it has also decisive disadvantage in front of course, Stoofvlees is on the first place, now Leela C0 is on the second place, and the Dragon engine on the third place. But in my opinion, Leela C0 won recently some great games, and Leela C0 is also in great shape. So that's why we'll have, I think, again, the great battle between arch enemies Leela C0 and the Stoofvlees engine. So let's check out now one great game by Leela C0. We have covered now many great games by Stoofvlees, also one great game by Dragon, and I think these games by Leela C0 are more understandable to us humans because Leela C0 will apply here, I think, more of these patterns that we can recognize in the game. Stoofvlees is playing always this brutal attacks, this brutal tactical lines, which are really hard for us humans to calculate what happens if that happens, and then what happens if that happens. You know, then the tactical sequence gets spread like a tree, and then you don't know what to do, where should you attack, where should you counterattack. So that's why it's really hard sometimes even to analyze the gameplay by Stoofvlees. So that's why I think these games by Leela C0 are more understandable to us humans. So let's check out now the game. D4 here played by Leela C0. The opponent of Leela C0 was another top engine Stoofvlees. Here Stoofvlees opened with the move knight to f6, but this was of course still pre-arranged. C4, G6, knight to c3, the bishop to G7, E4, and now we have the King's Indian. So that was the line that they had to play. Bishop to E2, still pre-arranged. Of course, we'll come to the moment till which the game was pre-arranged. Now after castling, we have bishop to G5, which is the so-called Auerbach variation. The Auerbach variation is, I think, one of the best ways to beat the King's Indian because you cannot play actually the normal King's Indian move. The normal King's Indian move is of course the move E5, and if you do that immediately, d takes E5, d takes E5, then you get queen to D8, rook to D8, and then you get this very annoying pin here with the move knight to D5, and then maybe you can cover here with knight to D7, but at least you're losing this pawn, and I think in this top engine level this is something that white wins immediately. So that's why this is a very, very tricky line already. Bishop to G5 is preventing this normal King's Indian move, the normal E5 pawn breakthrough. So here knight from B to D7 was still pre-arranged. Now we have queen to D2, E5. Now it's possible because here it's a great protection, but also a great protection of the E5. If d takes E5 happens, still we can recapture with the knight. So here in the continuation, D5 was still pre-arranged, and now the last pre-arranged move by the organizer was to move A5. What to say about this position now? The pawn structure in the center is blocked. So we know that because here we have this pawn structure E4, D5, and also D6, E5. This means whenever you have this blocked pawn structure, when at least 4 pawns are participating in the center and they're blocked like this, then you should always evaluate first of all your bishop strength. And what we can notice immediately that the light square bishop of white is not good because it's blocked out by its own pawn. So we should evaluate this piece as bad here from white's perspective. What black has of course as a disadvantage is the dark square bishop. This dark square bishop is of course blocked out also a little bit but by its own pawn chain. So what white would love to do is of course maybe in this position to get rid of this bishop for this bishop, because in the main line of any King's Indian, I think black is always trying to move f5, and then after move f4 you see this light square bishop will be actually the best piece on the board. So the light square bishop would really support the potential f5 f4 pawn breakthrough. So that's why I think when it comes to positional trade of pieces, that white would love really to trade off this bishop for this bishop, and black would also like to give up maybe this bishop for this bishop. So these are maybe this positional trades of pieces, but it's actually very, very clear where black should attack, because black is always searching here, as we said, for this f5 pawn breakthrough, that like in the normal or the orthodox variation of the King's Indian. So that are the main strategies, but here Leela C0 will apply a great strategy, which I like to call it the pseudo flank attack. We know about, of course, about flank attacks. Flank attacks are very, very nice ideas when you're playing against your opponents at fianchetto. So here we have the fianchetto position. What we want to do now, maybe from white perspective, is to move h4, h5, h5, then maybe h takes g6, then play bishop to h6, maybe bishop to h6, then queen to h6, and then maybe with the rook and queen batter deliver even checkmate here on the h file. But there is one problem of this particular position. If you play this flank attack too early, black can also break the position with the move c5. So when you're playing maybe an attack, maybe like here on the king side, then you have to also secure the king maybe by castling on the other side. So that's why when black maybe opens the position with the move c6, then it's very, very hard for white to castle here on the queen side. So that's why here Leela c0 will stay with the king a little bit more in the center, but will play the so-called, I like to call it, as I said, the pseudo flank attack. It's actually flank attack, but with the possibilities, although we have now pushed some pawns here on h5, h4, h5, h6 if it's possible, but still with opportunities to even castle on that side of the board. So you were basically attacking one side of the board and then we're trying to castle again on that side of the board. It's really wild. I like to call it really the pseudo flank attack. It's like a flank attack, but we're castling, as I said, simply on that side where we have already created the attack. So be prepared. This is really something I think that you should apply sometimes, and I've talked about this pseudo flank attack ideas in one of my basics in chess series videos. I'll show you, of course, the link of the video at the end of this video. Maybe you can check it out. You see more about these ideas, because these are very, very brutal ideas, I think, in chess, because what white is hoping for this pseudo flank attack with the move h4 now is to create here really a paralyzed position on the king side, because as we said, black is trying always the move f5, and now maybe when the pawn structure is a little bit blocked out on the king side, then it's possible to castle on the king side here, because white still has always the advantage here with this advanced pawns, and with this pawn chain, of course, white can maybe make further progress with the move maybe b4 and then c5 if it's possible. So let's see now what happened, because I think you understand what I'm talking about now in the next couple of moves. I'm sorry if I'm complicating things too much, but these are very, very interesting ideas in chess, and I think you should be really familiar with them. So here after move h4, we have now this move c6. Now you see, that's why if you castle now immediately, then maybe this can happen, c takes d5, and you see now with b6 bishop to b7 rook to c8, I think black could have also great counterattack here on the queen side, because also this advanced pawn is very dangerous. We could try maybe something like a4, then also a3 to simply open the position here on the queen side, because white king on c1 could be really, really in danger. So these are really brilliant ideas in chess. So that's why after move h5, after move c6 here, Leela c0, so simply continuing the pressure with the move h5. Of course, you cannot take out with the knight because the knight is pinned, but you don't want to, of course, take also with this pawn, because the pawn structure is messed up. Then we can play rook to h5 or bishop to h5. Still, of course, you cannot take out with the knight. So after move h5, here knight to c5 was played by Stoofvlees. Here we have h6 immediately, attacking here the bishop. We have a bishop to h8, and now f3, simply protecting this pawn on e4. Now we Stoofvlees plays the move a4, and now g4, continuing the pressure on the king side. But actually the problem of white is we're not trying here really to open the position on the king side. That's not the point of this attack. That's, I think, a huge difference. When we're playing a normal flank attack on the king, then we're trying to open files. This flank attack we use just in order to stop black's progress, because we said, as I said, that black is trying this f5 move. So we're preventing basically black's attacking ideas by creating ourselves that attack. I'm not sure really if I'm complicating things too much, because this is something that I really like to do in chess, complicating things like this, complicating the position like this, trying to really block your opponent's progress here. In the continuation here, bishop to d7, which is also a normal idea here by Stoofvlees. We have knight to h3, we have c takes d5, c takes d5, we have now queen to a5, and you see now after move knight to f2, it's really even possible to castle now on the king side, because first of all we have here a great setup. These pawns are protected by the pawn, the knight is controlling here the center of the board, the bishop is a very good defensive piece, the knight is here also on a very good square, and this bishop is already active because the knight is a little bit pinned here, because if the knight moves, then you could also risk some ideas of bishop to e7, and then your d6 pawn could be hanging. So the d6 pawn is, I think, now the main weakness in black's position. That's actually this backward pawn, that's actually the cornerstone of black defense. If you lose now this pawn, your whole defense is falling apart, I think. Then you're basically strategically lost. So in the continuation we have b5. Now now castling. As I said, the point of this attack wasn't simply to create here some madness to open the position. Here the g4, e4 and f3 setup with the potential f5 move are blocking really the black's ideas. Black can never really open the position. If you do that immediately, then king to h1 could happen, and then rook to g1, and again blacks could be really endangered. So here after the move rook to b8, we have now queen to e3, we have queen to d8, and now king to g2, simply improving the position of the king. Queen to f8, you see this pawn has to be protected. That's the main issue here of blacks. Black has to get with the queen back just in order to defend the pawn, but actually what black is also hoping for is finally maybe to open the position with the move f5. We have now bishop to h4 here by Leela c0, queen to d8, bishop to g5. Here there were some perpetuals, and now after move rook to a from a to c1, we have now knight to e8. Now of course bishop to e7 is not a possibility. So here bishop to h4, we have b4, and here knight to b1 was played, but actually you see, although black has here this advanced pawns on the b file and on the a file, there's nothing that can be done I think here, because even if you push now the move b3 will simply pass through with the move a3. If you play now for instance a3, we can simply pass through with the move b3. That's actually the so-called parallel defense with the pawns, so the parallel setup 2 versus 2. So whenever black is moving one pawn, then we're simply passing through with this other pawn. So even if you try here f5 immediately, I've also analyzed this line, it's my opinion it's simply losing here. G takes f5, g takes f5, then queen to g5 is happening, so you have to play king to f7, and your king is even endangered, although you have opened the position like you wanted to, like in the normal king's Indian, but actually it's not possible. It's already a losing game here for black. So here after move knight to b1, we have knight to c7. Stoofvlees is trying to maneuver more pieces. We have bishop to c4, knight to b5, and now knight to d3. Very important idea. We want to get rid of this very annoying knight. This knight is very dangerous here. It's supported by the d6 pawn, so it's really a powerful knight in the center of the board. So here Leela c0 is trying to searching here really for some positional trades of pieces. So here after move knight to d3, we have bishop to d3. You see how Leela stays with the queen here always, never really allowing this move f5. If that happens, of course we have seen this idea queen to g5, and then the king is more and more dangerous. So here knight to d4, we have rook to g1, again a preparation here by Leela c0. Now maybe with king to h1, again if you play f5, then the rook will be very dangerous. Then the rook would aim against the black's king, so that's why here all of these moves by Leela c0 are preventing basically this f5 move. So here in the continuation we have now b3, but as we said, we're simply passing through with the move a3, bishop to b5, bishop to b5, rook to b5, now rook to c7. The serious threat, well, as I said, is now the move bishop to e7 and simply grabbing this pawn. So here if you try here queen to b8, it's not so dangerous. Of course we can get back here with the move rook to c1. If you try even now knight to c2, still we can play queen to c3 and the rook is protected. Now in the next couple moves I think we can try this idea, bishop to e7, and then try to take out this very annoying pawn on d6. So here after move rook to c7, we have rook to b8, rook to c1. Now comes the similar idea, knight to c2, attacking the queen, queen to d2, and now rook to c8. And now great move by Leela c0. Here Leela c0 played the move the rook to d7, because again if you simply attack the rook, you simply lose the pawn here on d6 and the game is basically over. This is a pawn that we wanted to take. Now also the e5 pawn is weak, so that's why here I think it's a position that black can immediately resign, so at least in the top engine level of course. So here after move rook to d7, we have rook to c4, we have knight to c3, and now rook from a to c8. But now comes this idea, we have bishop to e7 attacking the queen, queen to e8, and now the rook still has some time to escape here on the square b7, and basically this pawn cannot be protected anymore, so this pawn is lost. Here after rook to c7, we have rook takes c7, rook takes c7, but now Leela c0 finally grabs the pawn, and from this point on it's a one-way ticket. From this point on, Stoofvlees is basically strategically lost. So in the continuation we have rook to c4, bishop to b4. Of course if you try knight takes b4, it's not so good. A takes b4, it's sort of a battle knight versus bishop, but we have said in the beginning, because of this pawn on e5, this bishop is bad. Now d6 is a huge opportunity. We have now this pass pawn because we have taken this very important pawn, so it's again strategically lost here game for black. So after move bishop to b4, here bishop to f6, you see Stoofvlees is desperately trying to get the bishop into the game. We have now d6, we have rook to d4 attacking the queen, and now a monstrous move by Leela c0, rook takes c2, sacrificing the queen, because if you try now rook to d2, it's not a problem. Rook takes d2 will will be played, of course, and then queen to d7. We have to block out a white's potential progress with the move d7, but now simply rook to d5, here bishop to d8. You could maybe try here from black's perspective to try somehow to get the bishop into the game, but now rook to e5, we can take another pawn. Maybe you can finally improve your piece now with bishop to b6, but now knight to d5, you see the threats, knight to f6, knight to e7, then maybe even d7, rook to e7 are serious threats. So it's again a position that black can immediately resign. Here the engine even says that it's a checkmate, forced checkmate in 14 moves. So really wild stuff. So after move rook to c2, here we have bishop to d8, now queen to e2, we have now b takes c3, queen to c2, we have now f5. Here comes, I think, one great tactical trap that Stoofvlees has prepared here, because if you try here, now e takes f5, it's not so good because you get queen to c6. The queen to c6 move is very dangerous because it's threatening, of course, here the move rook to g4. Even if you try something like king to f2, maybe to escape from this tactic, then you get simply bishop to h4, and here white is simply tactically lost. The pieces are dancing around white's king, so white's king is simply trapped. Even if you try here something like king to h3, then again it's not improving anything. We can play queen to f3, you lose simply the pawn. Even if you try rook king to g3, then again bishop to g5 can happen with ideas of bishop to f4. Here in continuation you can maybe try f takes g6, but now bishop to f4 will happen, and now you have to get back, and now rook to d2 is immediately winning the game, I think. So really wild stuff. So what can happen if you make only one inaccuracy in the continuation of the game? So you see this top engine Stoofvlees is also setting up some traps, but here after move f5, Leela c0 didn't fall for this. Of course, Leela c0 was also a great tactician. Of course, here played simply knight to e2, counter-attacking against the rook, because now the rook is also trapped. The rook doesn't have good square, so that's why Stoofvlees tried rook takes b4. We have a takes b4, f takes g4, now f4. Very cool move, because if you play here f takes g4, still it's a good position here for Leela c0, but I think queen to d7 is complicating things a little bit for white, because then you have to protect this pawn somehow. Still, as I said, a much better position for white. But imagine you're playing now this position as white, and you're human, and maybe against a top grandmaster, then you don't want to create further weaknesses. So that's why here with the move f4, what Leela c0 has accomplished is after potential e takes f4, here that maybe black could have played here knight to f4 will happen, and then your knight is getting very active. At least you get your knight into the center of the board. So here after move f4, we have the queen to e6. Again, Stoofvlees is trying to sneak in somehow with the queen to deliver some checks, maybe trying some perpetuals, getting a draw somehow, but Leela c0 plays here f takes e5, queen to e5, now queen to c4 check, king to f8, and now queen to d4. Perfect move, because if you take now queen to d4, knight to d4, this wasn't played in the game, but then again you're inviting your opponent's knight into the game, and you can try maybe bishop to b6 attacking the knight, but then you get knight to e6. Here idea could be maybe knight to king to e8, but then knight to c5 is winning the game, because also here d7 is a possibility, then maybe e5 e6. If you take, of course, then you get this one, and the three connected pawns are simply, I think, too much to handle here for black. Black is strategically lost in this potential endgame. So queen to d4, as we said, so that's why Stoofvlees cannot trade off the queen, cannot simplify the game. Queen to f6, here queen to c3. Again, here Leela c0 is hoping to trade off the queens just in order to get again with the knight into the game. Here in the continuation we have g3, we have queen to d4, protecting also now this f2 square, because we have said what Stoofvlees is hoping for is maybe here sort of a perpetual or even checkmate. Here queen to f2, then maybe queen to h2 would of course be a checkmate. So here g5, we have b5, here king to f7, e5, we have queen to h6, again trying some checks here on h2, so that's why queen to c4 first to check, we have queen to e6, and now queen to e4 again, we have queen to b3 trying to take out the pawn on b2, but now again new check, queen to f5, king to g7, and now e6. Very cool move, because now we are also threatening here queen to f7, then also to get with the knight into the game, and combined the queen and the knight are of course functioning very good, and then of course black king is in much trouble. So here after move e6, queen to b2, we have queen to e4, queen to f6, now knight takes g3, we have a king to f8, now pushing simply this pawn. We're trying of course to deflect the bishop from potential defense here around the square e7, so that's why here queen to b2, we have king to h3, g4, queen to g4, we have queen to b6, now queen to f5, a check, and now it's a forced checkmate. Queen to f7, we have king to h6, now e7, attacking the bishop, d takes e7, queen to e6, a check, we have king to g5, again new check, comes of course by taking the bishop. You have only one good square here, king to g6, now queen to e6, now knight to f5, king to f8, queen to e7, and here queen to g7. It was a checkmate. So great game here by Leela C0. I think it was a great flank attack, this pseudo flank attack. So as we said, we are not trying to deliver their checkmate, we're trying there to simplify the position, to paralyze a little bit position, and then castle basically into the attack. So it was a brilliant idea. So as I said, if you want to study more about this strategy, check out my basics in chess series video, this pseudo flank attack in chess. I think you can learn something, maybe try it out, apply it against fianchetto ideas, against also some other ideas. If it's possible, you should consider this strategical element. Here's the link of the video. And if you want to see more brutal attacks like this, check out my commented chess games played by computers, the best chess games played by engine. Here's also the link. And if you like this content, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. See you soon with some more videos, and chess is the best, of course.